Okay. I think everything is up and running. Morning. Make sure this doesn't fly away on me. Good to see y'all, at least in chat form, right? Sorry again for the late notice. I mean, I sent it out at 7 something this morning, but still, sometimes I've done it too where I don't quite check my stuff in the morning, but I tried to hit it on Canvas and Discord this time, so looks like a bunch of you got the notice because there's 60 people in here right now, so that should be good. Yeah, assignment. Let's go over some housekeeping stuff, okay? Armored Core is great. Yeah, it's been fun. Honestly, I've been playing more hardcore World of Warcraft right now because all my buddies are playing, which is just a problem that I have. It's an addiction, but it's fine. Yeah, let's go over some housekeeping stuff. So let's talk assignments for this week because we did push a couple things back. So let me just make sure stuff is working here. Your setup looks like a real streamer. I've taught my class online before, so I've tried to make sure that I'm not giving you like streaming off of an iPhone, you know? Oh, thanks for that. I need to like go in and fine tune that because I did that quite a few years ago. I'd like to revamp it and make it look nicer, but let's see here. I'm gonna adjust something here a little bit too. This is a little bright. There we go. Okay. You should actually stream. I do stream sometimes just for fun. I might stream hardcore WoW just for fun, but I don't know. This is mostly used for teaching, but I do some random gaming streams too, but that's why I have the setup, right? Because I did teach my class online exclusively for like 3 years during COVID, so yeah, WoW will definitely suck you in. It's a dangerous game you play with WoW. It's a lot of fun. It's my favorite game outside of Final Fantasy VII. Like, it's my favorite game to play, right? But it's a dangerous game with that. Okay, let's see here. So, just looking at the Canvas page right now, it looks like we have 2 assignments that are kind of showing as due, like, not really due this week, but we have our shape and balance assignment that was due last week, or that we started last week, right? Due today. Hello. Glad to see everyone jumping in. Good to see you. Nothing yet. Just talking shop a little bit. We're going to talk about assignments right now. So design number 2, shape and balance, the one where you're creating your own character, dropping it into the different compositions, right? Is going to be bumped to Wednesday night. So I'll make it due Wednesday night, so you have until after your lab to finish that. And then if we need to, I can bump the perspective assignment too, but I'm just going to leave it right now for due next Monday. But if it turns out we need a little bit more time on that, I can bump that one to the next Wednesday. Like, we have some space to work around. You can do work outside of the labs. Does that mean lab is not required attendance? There will be a couple labs that I do have assignments for, and I would suggest going to at least the Monday lab, right? Okay. The Wednesday one I would say is a little bit more flexible. Like, at least go to your Monday labs so you can get extra help with the assignment and talk to your TAs. The Wednesday lab, I would say, you know, I'm not making it required as like you don't have to go every week, right? but I'm not counting points for you going to the labs, right? So I would say the Wednesday one's a little more flexible. If you're already done with the assignment, there's no reason for you to go to the Wednesday lab, right? But at least I would definitely say show up to the Monday one. Wednesday one's a little more flexible if you're done. If you need more help and more time, then I would say go to your Wednesday ones. That would be my suggestion. Will we teach shape and balance today in class? So technically I sent out a video for you to watch on that shape and balance assignment. But we can talk over a little bit if you want. And then we're going to talk about the, then we're going to talk about, perspective. Sorry, I was blanking for a second there. So your next assignment is the perspective assignment. Okay. So we can chat a little bit about the shape and balance assignment. The video that I did send out, which was on the Discord, I believe. I sent out and linked a video for you guys to watch last week, which was the one where I was drawing the skeleton guy. That should be the video for you to watch for that assignment. Okay. But I can go over it just quickly here. So let me pull up this screen here really fast. So design number 2, right, was here. I'll show you guys. So on Discord, I should have made it a little more clear. It's my fault. But I did post this one last week. A student mentioned, hey, since we didn't have lecture because of the holiday, is there any slides on the assignment, right, that we can read through for lab? So then I sent out this video, right? I should have like tagged and hit everyone on that. I can edit this and do that if that will make more sense. And honestly, okay, here's the thing. I'm okay if we want to do this assignment today. Oh, jeez. So hey guys, let's keep that chat kind of a little cleaner in there, yeah? Shall we? I'm gonna start, if I gotta delete stuff out of there, I will. Okay, let's try to keep that a little cleaner in there. Okay. Yeah, we don't need to be talking about certain stuff in there. Okay. I'm glad you're having fun, but let's keep it professional in there. Okay. So I'm going to take some of these out that were a little. Let's keep it about class. I know you like to meme and stuff, but let's keep it about class. Okay. So here's the thing. I'm cool with talking design 2 today if we need to bump it a little bit. But what I want to see is how many of you, I mean, there's 13 submissions, right? So here's my thing. There's a bunch of you in the class. 13 of you have turned it in. Okay. Throw a 1 in the chat if you would like to go over design 2 today. Throw a 2 in the chat if you're ready to go to design 3. So 1 in the chat if you want to focus on design 2 today, or if you're ready for design 3, throw a 2 in the chat. So I can just gauge what's up here. Because I'm happy to go through it if you'd like. but I do have the video, so that's kind of where I'm at with it. But I'm happy to do either thing. Okay, I'm seeing a pretty good split there with 2s and 1s. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to quickly kind of go through design number 2, and then let's talk design 3. Okay, that's the plan for today. So that's what we'll do. The stream might go a little bit longer than our normal class time would, but again, this will go up on the YouTube channel, so you can watch that back as much as you want. But let's chat about design number 2, okay? Because that, like I said, there's a good amount of split there. So if we're talking design 2, okay? Design 2, you are going to be creating a unique character, right? And then that unique character is going to be placed in a number of backgrounds, okay? So in that stream, the first thing we do is I go through designing my character, which is a similar process to what I did with drawing the simple game characters, right? No, you can draw it in as many different poses as you want, right? Okay, totally fine. Yeah, as many as, if you want to take that same character and draw it in different poses in each composition, that's totally fine. Okay. So here's the thing with this. The first thing I did was I drew out the character and designed the character, right? And then I'm dropping him in these different backgrounds. So each this video will be posted. Yep. It will just go right to the YouTube channel, save right to the channel. So you're going to have 4 different compositions, right? So I have my character, and then I'm just drawing these different compositions and dropping him in these compositions. Okay. Those compositions are going to reflect, the different shape and balance notes that we've talked about, right? So you're going to demonstrate symmetrical balance, asymmetrical balance, radial balance, and mosaic balance. Well, if I moved it to Wednesday, yep. Backgrounds can be from a pre-existing universe if you want. Remember, you're hand drawing these though, right? So don't copy paste things from the internet. You're drawing these out yourself. But yeah, they can be a pre-existing location. Like if you want to recreate a Sonic level or something, that's fine with me. I don't care. Okay. The character should be unique though. You're drawing your own characters. Okay. Totally fine with that. So you're going to demonstrate these different types of balance, right? So asymmetrical balance, symmetrical balance, radial, and mosaic balance, right? So here's the unique character, right? Excuse me. The unique character is then dropped into the 4 different compositions. And then I want you to just paste them like this in the Photoshop document. Or you can drop me 4 different separate PNGs, stitched together. However you want to do that. But I should get 4 different compositions from you, right? Okay. Any other questions on design 2? The same process as the simple game characters. So you really only need to use the brush tool, maybe the move tool, and then some of the shape tools if you really need it, right? So all of those things should be fairly simple because you've done them now once at least, right? So getting in there with the brush tool, working with that stuff. I need to grab my drawing tablet. Hold on. Make sure I have it. Does the character have to be simple, or can it be a little more complex, like a drawing of a person? I'm fine either way. This character's a little more complex. I mean, he's not crazy. He's fairly simple. But I'm happy either way. Okay, got my pen, got my tablet here. Because we're going to get into perspective here in just a second. I do have a slideshow to go through with you guys too. But yeah. Can we use the same drawing of the character in each of the compositions? Yes. Yes, you can. Your voice sounds like Markiplier's. I wish I made as much money as that dude. That's pretty funny. I'm sure that dude's raking it in on YouTube. That would be great. Yeah, no. Character, I'm fine. I'm fine either way. It can be, yeah. Try spend 10 hours on it. Yeah, spend as much time as you want. If you're having fun, I'm cool with whatever you want to do. Okay. Characters can be simple, right? You already know how to use Photoshop, and oftentimes it's easier to do these drawing assignments on my iPad on Procreate. I would love to do them on Procreate too, because to be honest with you, I do 95% of my 2D drawing on Procreate. But the idea is for you to do them in Photoshop. That's kind of the goal, because there's other people that are like, can I do them in Krita? Could I do it in SciPainter? A couple other programs people have mentioned, right? So I would prefer you do them in Photoshop. I know that sucks sometimes, right? Because you're like, wow, I could just do them on my iPad. Trust me, I believe you. Like, this is my go-to, right? Like, I do all my stuff in my Procreate. Like, you can see I've got tons of stuff in here that I've just been doing, right? So I trust me, my favorite stylus in the world for drawing, like digital art, is this. The Apple Pencil is way better than this thing. It just is, right? At least for me, like it's the most comfortable and like usable stylus. But yeah, the idea is we do them in Photoshop. I know you know how to, if you know how to use it, that's great. But yeah, I feel you, because I love to use, yeah, the Photoshop on iPad is still good. It's still really good, but there's some key things that are missing. One is the ability to draw straight lines. Like, I can't do this on the Photoshop iPad app. So if I'm trying to draw a straight line, I can't do this on the Photoshop iPad app. I also can't tap, hold shift, and tap again to draw a straight line too. So there's some really key things that are missing that are really frustrating, that they're missing from the iPad app. So yeah, it's really annoying that they're not in there. Yeah, I've never used Clip Studio Paint. I'm a Photoshop and Procreate are the two that I'm super comfortable with, and then Illustrator. Yeah, if you have a tablet with extra keys. Yeah, my tablet does have the extra keys. So I have a couple hotkeys set to these guys right here on there. If you can see that, yeah. Never use Clip Studio. Procreate is honestly my favorite drawing app outside of Photoshop. Like, there's some things in Procreate that are frustrating that I can't do either. Like, you can't draw a perfectly straight line in Procreate. You kind of can. Like, if you drag and hold, it will kind of do it. But there's no super clean way to do it. They just announced Clip Studio, or not Clip Studio, Procreate animation. Something Procreate, where you can do animations in Procreate now, which seems crazy. So that will be cool. Yeah, Photoshop is definitely an industry standard for everybody. So it's good to know and good to use. But yeah. Any other questions on... Yeah, Procreate. I think it's a whole new app. It's like a Procreate animation app. I thought. Maybe it's not, but... I love Procreate and Apple Pen. Like, the iPad is my favorite way to draw, but yeah. Kind of, but they did more stuff with that. Kaz is what it seemed like. Yeah, seemed like there was more stuff in it now. I mean, I didn't watch the whole keynote on it, but it seemed pretty cool. Okay, any more questions on Design 2? I want to make sure we've covered everything that you guys want to hit for Design 2. Do the compositions need color? Yeah, they should just have simple color and simple shading. No, so here's the deal. I would still invest in this, unfortunately. Until this becomes more functional. Like, it's great. This is my sketchbook, right? This is my sketchbook. This is my professional tool, right? So I still do like things on this that I'll post on social media and stuff when I'm doing art for that. But when I need to do my professional stuff and ZBrush and things like that, that's when this comes in, right? Flats is fine. That's totally fine. Flats is fine. Shading is more important on this next one. So just color flats is fine. I would say this one would be symmetrical. Yeah, you could consider this one symmetrical. Shading is a battle, and we can talk about shading a little bit if you'd like, because it's going to become apparent today in the perspective assignment, because I do want you to do some simple shading there. So we could battle shading for a second. Let's talk about it. And then we do need to jump into perspective. So let's do this really quick. Let's get a really nice high pixel count going here. Okay, so let's talk shading for a second. So the battle with shading, okay? The battle with shading is one, okay? Light source. So understanding where your light source is, okay? So one is light source, okay? Right? Yeah, you can use masks. We'll talk about using a clipping mask. Yeah, totally. So, light source. 2 is understanding reflections. That's wow. I don't know how to spell. Okay. And then 3 is manipulating the software to make it way easier, right? So software. So this is where we'll talk about masking, alpha locking, right? Those types of things, okay? So now that we've done that, I'm going to delete all this, or we'll just fill this background layer again with that color. create a new layer here. Okay, so let's talk about this. So let's do simple shading on a sphere really quick. Spheres are pretty simple. We'll put a sphere together really quickly here. We'll just fill this with like a neutral gray color here. Okay. No stroke on there. Okay. So I have a simple gray sphere here, right? Well, it's not a sphere yet. This is just a circle. Okay. But if I come in here and I go to a new layer and I right click this layer, I can set up a clipping mask on this layer. Okay. What a clipping mask does is it takes the layer below, and now if I paint on this layer, it only is going to allow me to paint within this sphere. Okay. So that's your first thing to help drawing shading, right? Because I don't want to have to be like creating my shading and then trying to erase right on the edge of the object. I just want to paint in light where it's at, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is take a really bright white here with a soft brush. I'm going to bump this up, and I'm also going to decide where my light source is coming from. Okay. This is different in cell shading versus like a soft shading here, right? In cell shading, we're going to do something much different, but with soft shading, right, we're going to pick our light source. So we're going to say, okay, if the light source is coming in from the top right here, it's going to put a nice bright light on the sphere right here, right? And then we're going to think of it in bands too, right? So here I have this really bright white, which I could also bring down this opacity of this layer too, right? And just decide how much light is actually hitting the top of that sphere there. If I wanted to then, you know, take this layer, increase this, and throw another layer that's also a clipping mask here, I could do that, right? I think my face is in front of the clipping mask stuff, so let me move my face here for a second. Get my face out of the way of the layers. So here I can change this to a clipping mask, right? Where did it go? There we go. So this is also set to a clipping mask, okay? And then I can take another layer here and really start brightening up, right? Say the sun is super intense here, or my light source is very intense here on this side of the sphere, right? That already is looking better, right? But then we can create another layer that's another clipping mask. So now that they're all in a row, right? And then I'm going to take a much darker color here, and I'm going to paint through and start working on some banding, right? So I want to make sure I'm hitting this with this banding here, okay? And it's going to wrap around the sphere like this, right? So now it's already shaded in a much more uniform way, right? If we turn these things off, right, we're just at a flat circle. But the one that really pushes it is that harsh light source, right? And then I'm hitting it with that shading where that banding is, right? And I could even get darker if I wanted to. I could come through with a much darker color, hit that again, right? Depending on the situation and what I'm trying to do. Right? So there's my shading. Okay. Then the last thing I'm going to have is when light is coming in from this direction, right? These are all in clipping masks. But when light is coming from this direction, okay? Right? it's going to hit the sphere. It's going to bounce in all directions, right? It's going to bounce off of this. It's going to keep bouncing, and it's going to bounce back on the underside of that ball too, right? What's that? Do you use a soft brush for both lighting and shading here? Yep. Yeah, I used a soft brush for both of it. There's a different technique, and I'll show you guys what cell shading is, and we can talk about that in a second too. This is more of a natural soft light though. So the last thing we're going to do here is we need to come in here with a little bit brighter brush. Again, a little bit brighter gray, because we're going to have a little bit of reflected light that's going to hit the sphere. Okay. And for some reason, it's not painting very well. There we go. Clipping mask is what's allowing me to paint just inside of the sphere, right? So see how if I'm painting out here right now, I'm pressing on my brush. It's not painting anywhere but inside of the sphere, right? So we're gonna have a little bit of reflected light right here. Not a ton. Like, we don't want to come in here like this. That looks a little weird. But we are going to have just a little bit of reflected light on the underside of that sphere right there, because it's going to bounce off of what that sphere is sitting on. And then you've got to talk about the shadow that's underneath. But the shadow that's underneath is going to be based on the light source too. So then you can just work on, you know, drawing a shadow underneath that, right? But that's shading in a nutshell, okay? Light source is coming in from the top or wherever it is. If it was coming in from the bottom, you'd do the same thing. It would just be flipped and reversed, right? Imagine we took all these layers, merged them, and then you can just kind of decide where that light source is coming from, right? So now, you know, if that light source was coming from, you know, a different direction, say it was coming in from that side, right? Or say it's coming in from the bottom. That looks a little weird, but right? That's where we design that light to be coming from. Okay. So that's just a quick crash course on shading, right? Yeah, we're not even getting into color theory. This is just gray flats, right? Color bounces and reflects off of stuff too, right? Light is not just white, right? There's colored light too. So sometimes when you're painting, there's so much we can get into, but this is not a color theory class, right? But yes, just talking in flats, right? Yeah, it looks a little bit like a steel ball because it's in grays, right? But yeah, quick crash course on shading. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about with you guys is let's jump into perspective. Okay. I do have a bit of a slideshow to go through with y'all that we can talk about here, and then we'll talk about your assignment. Okay, let's see. Okay. That's not right. Do we go here and go slideshow? Nope. Do we go here? Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to make this slideshow go to the right screen. Nope. Can I pick? There we go. Now you guys should be able to see this. Perfect. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, we'll start here. Why is that not? Gosh. There we go. Okay. Cool. So, perspective, okay? This is what we're focusing on this week, right? This is what our assignment's going to be on this week. You do have, again, we were talking a little bit about your other stuff, but this is what Design 3 is on, okay? So we're going to talk about how we're going to talk about how perspective is used in games, right? A little bit about some technical stuff with perspective as well, but we're going to jump into this. So when we're talking about perspective, oftentimes, especially in the games world, when we have a video game that has this sort of skewed top-down overhead point of view, we call this isometric, right? You hear that quite a bit when people are talking about top-down isometric games, right? That's not necessarily the most accurate term, but it's flashy and people like to use it, so that's why it gets coined that way. So these slides were made in during COVID, so here's your COVID joke, right? A viewpoint in a game consists of two separate elements. We have direction and projection, right? And those two things must stay at least 6 feet apart, right? Pretty lame, but it was funny during the time, right? So when we're talking about direction, okay, we're talking about the orientation of the camera in space, right? The angle and direction is the camera, and the direction that camera is looking at the game, right? So how is that camera looking at the game? Okay, this can be static, but it will likely change, and it may be player controlled. Okay, so we have some examples, right? In Ollie Ollie, it's just a fixed side profile, right? An orthographic side view of the world. Okay, God of War, you have a more action-oriented over-the-shoulder camera. Games like Eastward is a more top-down, isometric viewpoint. But we'll learn more about this and what it's actually called. Then we have projection, okay? And projection is the method used to represent three-dimensional objects on a two-dimensional plane, okay? For example, your screen. Let me move my camera again. Oops. So we have, I covered the God of War picture up. Sorry. I'll make sure my face is not covering the slides so we can go back a little bit here. So yeah, talked about God of War, Eastward. Now we've got, projection, which we're talking about, which is the method used to represent three-dimensional objects on a two-dimensional plane. For example, your screen, okay? So there are ways of accomplishing this, and each technique has a huge impact on the way the game looks and the game's mechanics, right? So Minecraft does not have the same camera and is not being represented the same way that Devil May Cry is, right? Maybe people want that, but it's a much different approach, right? The camera and the way that things are projected on the screen is much more fluid, a lot faster in Devil May Cry. Minecraft, while there are parts of the game that are a little more actiony, it's a little more toned back, a little smoother, a little slower. Little Nightmares has a very pulled back perspective and projection so that you can see more of the screen, right? And with that being said, we're talking about projection. Let me not cover up Arnold's beautiful photo here, right? We have 3 different types of projection, right? We have orthographic, which has a subset called axonometric, right? And there's 3 types of axonometric projection: isometric, dimetric, and trimetric. Then we have oblique projection, which is a subset of cabinet projection. There's also some nice obliques over here for you to look at. He's a very, very strong man over there. And then we're going to talk about perspective a little bit. So we'll jump into these things. So when we're talking about orthographic projection, let me move my face where I'm not blocking stuff. When we're talking about orthographic projection lies on a lack of perspective and a consistent relationship between its axes, right? What this means is that the objects don't get smaller as they get closer to the horizon because there isn't really a horizon to deal with, right? Could you hold on to this slide? The 3 different types. Yeah, I'll hold on these for a second. Yeah, I'm a lo-fi guy, so that's all my music is lo-fi. So because there's no real horizon, the ratios, which the axes are X, Y, and Z, they're foreshortened and rotated, and they're consistent across the board, right? So when you view, there's a version of the slides on the announcements page on the Discord. So if you go here, I have the perspective slides right here in the announcements. You just have to scroll up a little bit. It's not too far up, but yeah, you should be able to see those. So that's orthographic projection, right? There's no real horizon, so things don't get smaller as they get closer to the horizon because there isn't one. So when you rotate an object, it relatively stays consistent across the board. Okay. So most side and top-down views are done orthographically, right? There's also some faking built into this because true orthographic would be a little bit weird, because in the Mario level like this, with a true orthographic perspective, the clouds would be filling the whole entire background, right? Because like if there's no real horizon, so things don't get smaller as they get further away, right? So those clouds should be up in your face and the same size and filling the whole background. Okay, that's how orthographic works. But artists take some liberties and, you know, we fake that a little bit to make this work properly. Orthographic is what you want to use for tile sets, right? Because it's right. The things don't change as they get further away, right? So you want to use that type of perspective for tile sets. It's also bad because depth and elevation are measured on the same axis, right? So depth and elevation, to see if something's further away or higher up, it's on the same axis. So things can get a little funky, okay? It could be argued, right? It could be argued that a top-down perspective, okay, could be argued that a top-down perspective view is 3D, but its height in the Y and its depth in the Z occupy the same space, right? So this type of view also fails to fully display 3 sides of a box, which can be easily accomplished by rotating the camera to the side and creating axonometric projection, which we're just about to talk about. Okay. So let's chat about that. So three basic types of axonometric projection. And the easiest way to tell them apart is to draw a circle around, right? Draw a circle around the corner of a cube where the three axes meet. Okay. This will give us the three angles between the axes, which in turn can be used to identify the projection type. Axonometric projections is not how our eye functions. Our human eye does not see things this way, right? Which is why using it presents some issues, namely depth and elevation of a landscape can blend together. You can kind of see it here in this axonometric. Things are kind of squashed. It feels like it's been smashed into the background a little bit, right? Still, any rough edges can be smoothed over, and art and level design can prevent architecture from wrapping around on itself. And at the end, it can oftentimes result in something fairly intuitive, right? So let's talk about the three types of axonometric projection. The first one is what we've been talking about the whole time, right? This is isometric projection, okay? In a true isometric view, the scale of all three dimensions, X, Y, and Z, is identical, okay? And the angle in between each axis is 120 degrees. A cube projected isometrically will retain its proportion, right? Meaning that its width, height, and length will all be of identical size. Also, all three faces of the cube will contain the same surface area. Okay, so here's some lovely drawings that depict that. Then we have what's called dimetric projection. And I feel like this cube or this photo right here is super helpful to kind of wrap your brain around these types of projection here. So we just talked about isometric, right? Where all of those angles are 120 degrees. Dimetric view is really similar to an isometric one, except it's a bit more loose with its restrictions, and only the two axes must be proportionally foreshortened and result in an identical angle, right? Really, it doesn't really matter what the value of this angle is, right? While the third one is simply based on the remainder, right? So you have your two angles that are that have to be that 120, and then the last one is just kind of filling in the gaps. This type of projection is what's most often used in video games and in pixel art, because it just makes more sense. It's easier to use, right? You don't have to follow such a strict rule like isometric. So that's why when people say top-down isometric, I go, actually it's top-down dimetric, but it doesn't sound as good, right? So games like one of the greatest games ever made, Final Fantasy Tactics, right, use this type of projection. Then you have trimetric projection, which we kind of already talked about a little bit. But what trimetric does is it retains the sense of symmetry found in isometric and dimetric. Let me move my face again. But it's a bit more stylized. The angles between all three axes are different, and as a result, each axis can be foreshortened by a different amount. This results in a pretty distinct look that has a clear angular bias, right? For example, you can see buildings pointing up left, right? And they'll look a lot different than a building that's pointing up right if the two structures are exactly the same, but they can look different, right? So here's those three different types again, just so you can kind of see the difference. So as an interesting side note, all orthographic projections follow a strict set of rules, making them very easy to do in 3D games. We want to make sure that that camera is locked to a specific angle though. If you try to move the camera in a Link to the Past or in Eastward, it's going to break the game automatically, right? That camera has to be locked at a specific angle to make that work. So let's talk about oblique projection. This one's a little bit different. Okay. Oblique projections, they're very similar to the orthographic counterparts. Both techniques are using parallel rays, right? But with one small difference. Orthographic rays hit the canvas at perpendicular angles for example, 90 degrees, whereas oblique rays hit the canvas at an angle between 0 and 180, as long as it's not 90 degrees, right? So this results in some arbitrary scaling of dimensions and angle proportions. To kind of simplify that, oblique projections are not really super strict on rules, right? And the resulting images can often appear sort of distorted, right? Why is the library so loud? I'm sorry, guys. The resulting images often appear distorted, right? So a sphere projected obliquely will appear as an oval, right? Due to this stretching out effect, oblique projection hasn't been super popular in games. There's really only one I can think of, and people haven't really used it much since. But I'll give you guys some mad props if you can tell me what game uses this perspective. It's old. It's an older game. Throw it in chat real fast if you know. Once you see it, you're going to go, oh my gosh, yeah, it does look like that. So due to this stretching out effect, oblique projection, you know, like it's not popular. Only one game. Tends to look a little awkward. Oblique projection can create unique appearance. And one of its subtypes, which is called cabinet projection, has enjoyed some success in video games. Yeah, the main character is in Smash Bros. Excite Bike. Oh, kind of. That's a good one. Maybe a little bit. Klonoa. Nope. PK Thunder is what the main character yells out while he's playing. It's dating me a little bit because it's a Super Nintendo game. Nope. We'll go through it. Earthbound. Okay. It is Ness. Yep. Earthbound. There you go. Mother. Yep. Yep. It's Earthbound. Yes. Okay. So, cabinet projection relies on first drawing one side of an object as it would appear looking directly at it, right? So, if I'm looking at a box, right? I'm drawing the front of a box, right? And then you're going to take the two sides away from it at a 45-degree angle. The lengths of these sides are also cut in half to help simulate a sense of depth. It's a fairly simple approach, and it's an easy to remember rule set, which is why it was used in furniture illustrations. Okay, so if you look at this, it is a weird looking perspective, but everything is drawn that way, right? The front of that car right here, right? We drew the front of the car, then we took the sides, angled them off at a 45 and cut off the back, right? So everywhere in this game it does that, and it's funny to watch and funny to look at, and now you'll never unsee it, but it's awesome. Looks great. It's got a lot of charm because of that. So that's cabinet projection. So now we're going to talk about perspective projection, and I know we're running a little long on our time, so what I'm going to do is we'll finish up the slides, and then I'm going to link a video from the Photoshop of me demoing the perspective assignment. Okay, so get my face out of here for a second. So we're running a little long on the lecture, so I'll link a video where I actually demo the perspective drawing stuff, and then your TA can also go over drawing in perspective too as well during your labs. So, but I'll link that video for you to watch. Okay, so unlike the other two projection types, yeah, I'm not sure, I haven't played Mother 3. Unlike the other two projection types, perspective projection relies on the concept of a focal point, right? The camera's angle and position don't really matter as the entire scene recedes into the distance. For example, the horizon when you're looking straight out, the Earth's core in a bird's eye view, right? This is how actual cameras work, which in turn, it's designed to emulate the functionality of the human eye. Okay. Yeah, Star Fox definitely plays with perspective for sure. Early 2D adventure games also do that. Point and click adventures do it quite a bit. I think this is called Dragon's Lair. To be fair, I have not played this game, but it's pretty popular. So early 2D adventure games followed this approach by using perspective illustrations for their backgrounds. These were all usually hand-drawn using the same point of view, which makes the scaling of characters a lot easier to estimate because as things get smaller, they go to the top of the screen and larger at the bottom of the screen. Now, this technique can easily create some visual oddities, but the low res and constant scaling factors kind of help keep that stuff to a minimum. Yeah, this is called Dragon's Lair. Yeah, for sure. But you can kind of see that, right? Those perspective drawings. So, although 3D games use some type of projection, shoehorning 2D games into these definitions is a bit trickier for starters. 2D games are rarely based on actual projections of three-dimensional areas, right? I'll turn my face off for this slide so you guys can see these cool screenshots. It's a bit trickier with 2D games, right? Because they're rarely based on actual projections of three-dimensional areas. Instead, they're artistic renditions. And with that, they're sort of subject to the specific artist's interpretation of that area, right? Bird's eye view games tend to fake perspective quite a bit, especially in Link to the Past, right? Because technically, the way that we're looking at this, you can see the top of the house, but you can't really see, you can still see the side of Link's face. So like Link should technically be rotated more towards the camera and you should only be able to see the top of his head, right? And just the way that certain things are shown in there, the perspective's off, but it works well and it's charming and it looks good, right? But it's not a true perspective there. Okay. So, they really fake those things sometimes to add detail and personality. While side scrollers often use an orthographic projection like we talked about in Mario, but they're faking the background, right? So, Earthworm Jim, Final Fantasy VII, Link to the Past, all use these really twisted projection types and views, which is great, right? So, while perspective is super important, there's also the ability to interpret how things are going to look, right? And then understanding where you can push those boundaries, right? Rules are meant to be broken, but it still needs to make sense. Sometimes it ends up being a little wonky, but that's okay. And I think that's the end. Okay. So, we'll come back here. So we've hit an hour, so we're over, and I don't want to push people too far past if they've got to be to class or be somewhere, right? So what I'm going to do is I have a video of me doing the perspective assignment and demoing it, right? That you guys can review on your own time, and before your lab or during your lab if you want to. So I will link that right now in the channel, in the Discord. Okay. It's right here. Yeah, totally. I get that. It's totally okay if you need to bounce. I'm just going to link this to everyone here. Okay. Here is the video. Okay. And you can love my my great thumbnail there too. Thanks everybody. I appreciate you hanging out. I'm glad that everyone was in here. We had like 70 something people in here, so I think everybody got the notification. So I will see you guys next Monday. And yeah, take a look at that video. You can watch this back if you need to. Have you ever played Detention? I have not. But with that, I'm going to let you all go. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Have a great week. Wednesday, your lab should be there as well if you need help with both assignments, the perspective or design number 2. Remember, if you have questions, to please put them in the Discord. Message me. I've been trying to do my best to keep up with all the DMs that I'm getting. Hopefully, you're getting the stuff you need from me. Opinion on FF13. I love Final Fantasy 13. I'm that guy, which is totally fine. So, thanks everybody. Appreciate it. Thanks, Maya. I will see you guys on Monday. Okay.